It will be of little avail to the people that the laws are made by men of their own choice, if the laws be so voluminous that they cannot be read, or so incoherent that they cannot be understood. James Madison, The Federalist, number 62. All right. Good morning. Welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad Podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. Do me a favor, folks. If you enjoy this show, be sure to hit that like and that subscribe button to my channel. And for the really serious folks out there, hit the bell so that you never miss an episode. All right. Today, we're going to talk about the Omnibus bill. Now, it's been withdrawn, but we're going to talk about it because I think there's some important things that we can learn with some of the tools that are out there. No longer are we held hostage to what other people have to say about these ridiculously long bills. So first and foremost, let's hear what they're saying from both sides of the aisle. So here's a video clip. This is Representative Donalds from the Finance Committee. So he's kind of talking about it, and then we're going to hear what the House Democrats said. Then we're going to kind of talk about the bill and identify what we can learn about it. So here we go. Let's dive right in to a video.
Elon Musk says the 1,547-page continuing resolution to keep the government running should not pass. Now listen to what Speaker Johnson had to say about that.
I was communicating with Elon last night. He said, we understand you're in an impossible position. Everybody knows that. Remember, guys, we still have just a razor-thin margin of Republicans. So any bill has to have Democrat votes. They understand the situation. They said, it's not directed to you, Mr. Speaker, but we don't like the spending.
Come on.
All right. So they're like, look, it's not about you. We just don't like this damn bill. Why not? Well, it's 1,547 pages. That's just like right there. Bad bill. On that alone, like when I know it sounds crazy. Like, dude, you can just determine a bill's no good by the length. Yes, and I'm going to show you in just a moment how we can do that. So, but let's continue hearing what everybody has to say.
On in, member of the House Financial Services Committee, Byron Donalds. Congressman, this bill will fund much of what DOGE is looking to cut. What's going on?
See, I like that already. Like, he's like, wait a minute. DOGE, which people are excited about, and you should be. Now, I get it. I didn't vote for Trump personally, but that doesn't mean that I can't be like, that's good, that's bad, that's bad. And I will do that. But DOGE, if it comes through, like right now, it's just talk. So I'm not getting too excited because, there's always a lot of talk about, hey, this shouldn't be in the bill. This shouldn't be in the bill. This is too much money, blah, blah. But then that talk never goes anywhere. So it's yet to be seen whether DOGE does anything, actually accomplishes anything more than just talk. However, I'm glad that we're having this conversation, and it's great that even the mainstream media is like, hey, turns out DOGE wants to get rid of all this stuff that you're trying to spend, all this spending that you want. So what's up? And then this gentleman here is going to tell us.
Unfortunately, this is what happens in the lame duck here on Capitol Hill. Listen, there was a historic election, a mandate given to President Trump. People want government efficiencies. They want lower spending. But the swamp and, frankly, congressional Democrats want what they want. And it was that or farmers suffer. And it's a very unfortunate bill. Listen, what we have here is a bill that puts disaster recovery for a state like mine of Florida and many other states. And that was held hostage to get EV mandates and all this other stuff through this package. Personally, as a member, I have to vote no because I'm not voting for this kind of garbage. This is a bad bill. It should not pass. Elon Musk is correct. A lot of my colleagues are correct. In my view, we should go back to the drawing board immediately. Disaster recovery should move on its own. And when it comes to the other functions of government, it should be a slim deal until Donald Trump comes back.
All right. So let's stop right there. He's absolutely correct. It is high time. It's long been past time that we start separating these things out and say, okay, you need the government to run, deal with that. Focus on the government running. That's it. Don't add all this other garbage in. Just that. Oh, you need this thing? Like maybe, okay, maybe some of those things aren't garbage, right? We'll just go with that for a second. Well, then fine. Make it a separate bill. Don't send like anybody that even says, hey, American people, check out this 1,547 page bill. We're about to pass it. In my opinion, that member of Congress, just for sheer asking the American people to do that, should lose their job on that alone. Because we're going to get into the details about what does it mean, like these 1,500 page bills, like how long does it take to go through? And I'm going to compare them. I'm going to give you a reference. Okay. But it's ridiculous. Like it should be slim. Now, I'm going to pause it here because we don't need to listen to the whole video. And let's hear what the Democrats had to say. It was pretty brief. So let's hear what they had to say.
Let's get out.
Oh, let's start it over. And
let's get out to the other top story of the day as we just see stepping up to the podium talking about a continuing resolution that Trump just recently tanked in the last hour or so. We're seeing these comments here coming in from Representative Hakeem Jeffries, the House Democratic leader, saying House Republicans have been ordered to shut down the government. And
I like this language. House Republicans have been ordered. Kind of, but not by the president. I mean, they mentioned it in the last video. There's a mandate. I'm not really big on this idea of like, oh, somebody won. They have a mandate to do all these things, because usually that mandate that's being talked about includes a lot of other things that weren't necessarily being part of the conversation when voters, elected a particular person. But fine, we'll go with it. Trump ordered them. He's like, you do this. And they all like fell in line. It couldn't be that the American people might want it too. Right. And look, this is why Democrats lost. That first line right there. House Republicans have been ordered to shut down the government. It's almost as if that they believe that once you get elected, it's no longer about what the people want. It's what Trump wants or whomever is in charge, right? Has nothing to do with the people anymore. And then they go on and they say, and it hurt working class Americans they claim to support. I don't know, Democrats. Have you ever considered that maybe working class Americans don't like this garbage either? Maybe it's not just Trump, because they elected Trump, who in part ran on, government efficiency. Elon Musk and Vivek got really loud voices and saying, hey, government is, ridiculously, it's the administrative state is just absurd. It needs cleaned up. It needs thinned out. People liked it. So I don't know, Democrats, maybe you start thinking that the American people might want some of this stuff too. But no, you're more worried about your bipartisan agreement than you are the American people. That's why you lost. All right, let's continue.
Hurt the working class Americans that claim support. Let's take you out to some live comments right now from Hakeem Jeffries in the halls of Congress. Let's listen into these comments.
House Republicans will now own any harm that is visited upon the American people that results from a government shutdown or worse. An agreement is an agreement. It was bipartisan, and there is nothing more to say.
Nothing more to say? That's why, that's it. Republicans, you own this if something bad happens. Well, then, okay, cool. If something good happens, guess who doesn't get to take any credit? You said Democrats, head right to the front of the class. That's what he's saying. He's like, look, they're more worried about whether or not the Republicans are beholden to this bipartisan agreement. Not about what the American people want. It's what's important is the agreement that they made, being bipartisan. We got on board, you got on board. This bill was a great bill. I mean, that's basically what he's saying. He's not using so many words, but when you come out with language like that, you are telling the American people that you approve of what was in this bill. So if the American people start rooting through the bill and then they say, wait a minute, you approve this? You approve of this? Okay, great. Democrats, you own the spending that's in that bill, but you will not own any benefit to the American people. So let's just say that the next bill is much more streamlined. It's slim, as it should be. Well, then when the government continues to run, because it will, let's be honest, whatever bill they pass, the government's going to run. So when that happens, you get no credit. None. Like, even if you supported it, right? Like, well, I mean, I will be one of the people to say, yeah, I get it. You supported it because you had no choice, but your initial words told me a lot about where you stand. It told me that you're more worried about bipartisanship. You're more worried about whatever was in the bill than what the American people might want. You were more interested in trying to pin any fear-mongering future catastrophe on Trump and the Republicans than you were to say, maybe the American people don't want this. And we do this like what? Every year, come Christmas time, oh, we're going to have a government shutdown. And then it's pointing fingers. No, you, no, you. What's wrong with this bill? Did you read this bill? I'm not. No, I think those days should be over. And hopefully with AI tools, those days will be over because it will become more and more difficult to bamboozle the American people. So let's talk about that bill a little bit. All right. So you have a bill that's 1,547 pages. So I did a little bit of questioning from Grok. And so here are some interesting details. Because, I always talk about the metadata. Like, what is it about? Metadata is like, if I call you, you may not, a third party may not know the details of our conversation, but they can still learn a lot from other information. Like, what time did I call you? Where does our phone show that we were when I called you? Who did I call prior to? Who did I call after? Right? Like, these are all details that can help build a picture of what might have been said in that conversation. How many times did I call you? Those kind of things. What was happening? Like, who am I? And then what is happening in the, in my world, if you will, around the time that I made those phone calls. Right. So you can learn a whole lot just on the details. So let's take a look here. 1,547 pages. The average legal document has roughly 250 words per page. So that means if you read at a speed of 200 words per minute, which is kind of low, kind of slow, 32 hours. It's going to take you 32 hours. Now, that's if you're continuously reading. 32, it's a full work week just to read it. And that's if nothing interrupts you. Like, you don't get a phone call, you don't take a bathroom break, you don't need to eat. I mean, I guess you could call it a full work week, 32 hours plus 8 hours for minor interruptions. But, that's just reading it straight through. Okay. What about taking notes? What about referencing some other bill? What about double checking numbers? Anything. All of a sudden, that's going to start adding up. And so you're probably looking at least 2 weeks, 2 work weeks to read through and understand this bill. 2 weeks. And how many of the 500, we'll just look at the House. How many members of the House out of 435 members, how many do you suppose actually spent a week or two reading that bill? I'm going to guess probably 0. But if there were any, 1 or 2. right? Like there's not going to be very many. If you read at 250 words per minute, then you can break it, then you can get it down to 26 hours. But again, I'm going to say for the purposes of including bio breaks and note taking, referencing other bills, you're talking a minimum of 2 weeks, minimum. So, but what about typing it up? What about just writing the bill? How long would that take? Well, if you type at 40 words per minute, which I believe is about the average typing speed for the American person, with no breaks, no rest periods, perfect accuracy, and consistent typing speed, you're looking at 161 hours just to type the bill up, just to put it together, right? Now, again, you're going to have breaks, you're going to have inaccuracies, you're going to make a mistake. There will be points where it's maybe you're typing faster, maybe you're typing slower, right? So you will have those. And so 161 hours. If you're talking about a 40-hour work week, then you have 4 weeks. 4 weeks to type this bill. But if you need to make changes, if you need to have any, it's going to take a lot longer. Just as a reference, we're trying to get an idea of like just how massive are these bills, and we're trying to put them in context of everyday life. So here's another reference point because I was like, well, what book could I reference that most people would recognize? And I was like, aha, the Bible, right? Like most people have seen a Bible, pretty much everybody. Whether or not you've read it, I mean, you may not have read the whole thing, but you've seen it. You know how big it is. You can estimate, you can, if I reference the Bible, it will make sense to you. So for reference, depending on the size of the print and, the size of the Bible itself, some of them are smaller, some of them are larger. So you can put more words on a page. You're looking at somewhere between 1,200 and 1,500 pages. So this bill that's supposed to keep the government running, that we do every year, is about the size of a Bible. Is that crazy or what? Size of a Bible, right? The number of words in the Bible are about 700 to 800,000, which is about the amount of words that are in this bill. I think the bill's estimated at about 750,000. So it's literally the size of a Bible. That's insane. That is crazy. That it's that, like, how is it that we can't write a bill any smaller than that keeps the government running? I mean, you don't have to necessarily, keep saying the same things over and over. You can just be like, hey, everything from last year, right? You can reference stuff. You can say, hey, everything, but whatever. You can just make a reference. In fact, somebody did just that, and I don't think I have it queued up because I made a mistake. So let me get this queued back up here. But Vivek actually did something that I thought was kind of neat. So where is it here? Is it this one? Yeah, there we go. And let's see here. All right. So I'm gonna do this. Give me just a second. Let me get back here. All right. So sorry. So I apologize for not having this queued up like I was supposed to. Usually try to do a little bit better than that. All right. So boom, there we go. Okay. So am I able to get that up on the screen now? Perfect. All right. So you might have trouble seeing this, and I'll try to zoom in a little bit. So this is Vivek's. He said, yes, it is possible to enact a simple one-page continuing resolution instead of a 1,500 plus page omnibus pork fest. Here it is. That's it. This is the bill right here. This is what one page would have done to keep the government running. One page. Every American could have read this in 5 minutes, right? Here's what it says. A bill making further continuing appropriations for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2025, be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America in Congress assembled. Short title. This bill may be cited as the Further Continuing Appropriations Act 2025. Section 2, the Continuing Appropriations Act 2025, Division A of Public Law is amended by striking the date specified in Section 106 and inserting March 14th, 2025. So they're just extending the date of what was already there. Like Now, he goes on to say, this is what a clean CR looks like. I still don't love it because it permits the historical spending excesses to continue. But at a bare minimum, we shouldn't be stacking even more waste on top. That's what he says over here. Right. And so he's just like, look, if you just want to continue the already existing spending, then just amend the date of the last one. That's it. That's how easy it would be. One page, and you could continue running the government. But the Democrats and Republicans in part submitted a 1,500-page document. They should be fired. The American people, we won't remember this. Sorry. We won't remember this come election time, but we should. We should remember, hey, oh yeah, who was it? Who are the bipartisan members of Congress that said, this is a good bill, let's submit it to the American people, and then hope that they don't bother reading it? Which is not a big, strong hope, because when it's 1,500 pages, most nobody's going to read it. All right. So what else do we got? Well, here's what Elon said. Let's go back to let me see here. Where's Elon? So we'll put his comment up on the screen here, and we'll see what he had to say about this. Where do we go? Boom. So Elon had to say this: your elected representatives have heard you, and now the terrible bill is dead. The voice of the people has triumphed. Vox populi, vox Dei. I think is how you say it. I don't do Latin, but like, okay, so like we spoke loud enough, made enough noise, and they said, all right, we're withdrawing this bill. And the Dems got all mad because they were like, but we had an agreement. But you said, okay, but the American people said even louder. How about that, Democrats? American people spoke. Maybe you should listen. You might even win the election next time. How about that? Start listening to the American people. All right, what else? So it's interesting because people were like, well, here's a statement from JD Vance. I'm going to put it up on the screen. We'll read it. All right. So he says, a statement from President Donald J. Trump and Vice President-elect JD Vance. The most foolish and inept thing ever done by congressional Republicans was allowing our country to hit the debt ceiling in 2025. It was a mistake and is now something that must be addressed. Meanwhile, Congress is considering a spending bill that would give sweetheart provisions for government censors and for Liz Cheney. The bill would make it easier to hide the records of the corrupt January 6th committee, which accomplished nothing for the American people and hid security failures that happened that day. This bill would also give Congress a pay increase while many Americans are struggling this Christmas. Increasing the debt ceiling is not great, but we'd rather do it on Biden's watch. If Democrats won't cooperate on the debt ceiling now, what makes anyone think they would do it in June during our administration? That's a good point. Like, if they're not going to cooperate now while they have a little bit of leverage, are they going to cooperate next year? Probably not. Let's have this debate now, and we should pass a streamlined spending bill that doesn't give Chuck Schumer and the Democrats everything they want. Republicans want to support our farmers, pay for disaster relief, and set our country up for success in 2025. The only way to do that is with a temporary funding bill without Democrat giveaways, combined with an increase in the debt ceiling. Anything else is a betrayal of our country. Republicans must get smart and tough. If Democrats threaten to shut down the government unless we give them everything they want, then call their bluff. It is Schumer and Biden who are holding up aid to our farmers and disaster relief. This chaos would not be happening if we had a real president. We will in 32 days. Okay, well, that's debatable, but I think I generally agree with the rest of what he had to say. Right? Like, play tough, okay? And reject the bill and say, no, this is not good. And AI tools are now allowing the American people to really understand. So here's a CBS News article. Let me put this up on the screen. We're going to read that, and then we're going to kind of dig into the bill a little bit, and I'm going to show you that Grok can. There it is. That Grok can actually be a benefit. So let's go here. All right, here's from CBS News. Pull it up on my screen so I can see what was in the continuing resolution to avert a government shutdown. See key details from the failed spending bill. Now, the old school way would be we would have to go and read this article and then maybe dig in and say, okay, was the news media reporting this accurately? But now we can use AI and it can assist us in reading these omnibus bills, which makes it easier for the American people to stomp their feet and say no. It's a lot harder when you don't remember Nancy Pelosi way back in the day, and she was like, "We got to pass the bill so we know what's in it." Like she acknowledged, like members of Congress don't even know what's in it. We got to pass it so we can see what we're getting, right? Like it's a Christmas present. Like, hey, just open it, see what you get. Yeah, maybe it's something good. Maybe you got coal. Maybe you got a toy. Who knows, right? And so the old way was we were reliant on the powers that be, or we had to trudge through and read it ourselves, which we know if Congress members aren't reading it, the American people unlikely are reading it as well. So it says here, congressional leaders unveiled a stopgap measure late Tuesday to keep the government funded for 3 months. Like, this is crazy. Fighting for 3 months. Like they're positioning us to have a government shutdown for a matter of 3 months if we don't get this. Like this is unacceptable. This is why I say if you submit a bill this large, your name should end up on a chopping block, and say, all right, guess who's not getting elected next time? You. You are Mr. or Mrs. Congressman because you said that this bill was okay and it's 1,500 pages. It's not okay. All right. It survived less than 24 hours after facing growing Republican opposition, including from President-elect Donald Trump. The 1,500-page measure, known as a continuing resolution, would have done more than keep the government funded at current levels to prevent a government shutdown. See, this even the media is pointing. They're like, hey, it would actually do more. No, it shouldn't do more. And like, so this is reason why kick them out. Oh, you're going to now stomp your feet and say, if the Republicans own it, if anything bad happens, oh, okay. But also, you supported this bill doing more than what you're stomping your feet about. You're just kind of obscuring that part. We'll hand wave and ignore that portion, right? It's not a big deal. No, it is a big deal. It is a big deal that you are going to threaten the other side and say, "Hey, we're going to pin all the blame on you if you don't pass this bill," while ignoring or just not, conveniently leaving out the fact that what you agreed to did a whole lot more than just keep the government running. It's a clever play, but I think it's over. All right. The bill was laden with dozens of add-ons, making it resemble the massive end-of-year spending packages that GOP leaders have vowed to avoid. House Speaker Mike Johnson said ahead of the measure's release on Tuesday that it was originally intended to be a, quote, very simple, very clean, end quote, stopgap funding measure to get the party into the new year. He is now left to deal with growing discontent among members of his own party as a Friday deadline looms. Now, let's point. They released it on Tuesday for Friday. Let me just tell you, I work for corporate America. If I had a project that was very important that I had to deliver to my boss, and it would be unacceptable for me to drop it on Tuesday. If it was a major project, a big project that maybe took months or weeks to put together, right? And if I said here on Tuesday, here it is, and the deadline was Friday, maybe my boss needed to submit this to their boss. It would be unacceptable to drop it on a Tuesday and then hope that there's plenty of time to make any last minute revisions. That would be unacceptable. I would be in trouble. Now, I might get away with it if it was everything that my boss wanted. But if there were a bunch of changes that needed to be made, and then I started whining and saying, well, the deadline's Friday, my boss is going to say? They're going to say, too bad, you should have delivered it sooner so that you had time to make the necessary changes. So if you need to stay up all night, you better make it happen. So I look at the Republicans and the Democrats and I say, You dropped 1,500-page bill on Tuesday for a Friday deadline. Something that we just went over and said that if you read at 200 words per minute would take you 32 hours to read. There's not even 32 hours, practically speaking, between Tuesday and Friday. There's not 32 hours for the American people to review and give their thumbs up. So, and we are the boss. We are the boss of Congress. They should be dropping it in time for the American people to read through it. I know that American people aren't really going to read bills, but they should drop it in plenty of time so that the American people who want to dig through and then push back on something have time to do that. And if they don't, their boss, the American people, should line them up to be fired. Not fired at, just fired. That's just the way it goes. Stop sending us bills at the last minute and being like, yeah, it's totally a good bill because it's bipartisan. Bipartisan doesn't mean squat, as we have found out. Anyway, House Majority Leader Steve Scalise, a Louisiana Republican, confirmed Wednesday evening that the measure is dead and that the path forward is unclear. There is no new agreement right now, Scalise said. Here is a look at some of the bill's major add-ons. We're gonna trust the media, but then we're gonna go do some of our own digging. So, disaster funding. Legislation included $110 billion in disaster aid. Okay, do we need that? Do we not? Maybe it should be in a separate bill. That's not necessary for the government to keep running. That's additional stuff. RFK Stadium transfer. Legislation would clear the way for a long-sought priority in Washington, D.C., transferring administrative jurisdiction over the RFK Memorial Stadium campus to the district, which will allow the city to negotiate the return of the Washington Commanders football team. Hey, Republicans, Democrats, bipartisan folk, let me tell you something. The government running has nothing to do with the stadium. The government should run regardless of any stadiums. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts. No stadium should ever be in a bill that is touted as this is going to help the American government run. Ever. That's like, this is the most ridiculous thing. They're hinging this passage on stuff like this. Fired. Fire them. Kick them out. This is ridiculous. Baltimore bridge building. The measure also included a commitment from the federal government to pay the entire cost of rebuilding Baltimore's Francis Scott Key Bridge, which collapsed in March. Look, I know that our infrastructure needs to be worked on, but again, separate bill. Looking at the Democrats and the Republicans, because again, this was bipartisan. Looking at both of them, why are you including this in a bill that is about keeping the government running? The government's been running. This collapsed in March. It is now December. The government's been running, even though this bridge was collapsed, and yet now this bridge is part of these add-ons that could lead us to a shutdown. And then the Democrats are stomping their feet and saying, "Oh, we had an agreement. You had a crappy agreement. Maybe you should have agreed to it. Maybe you should have done better." But no, you've got Trump and Elon and Vivek and some other Republicans who are like, "No, this is not good." So Democrats own, and to some extent the Republicans own all of these things because you put your name on it and said, this is good. All right, what else we got? Pay raises for members of Congress. Oh, so the government can't run unless you get a raise? Wow, imagine if I told my boss that. Imagine if I said to my boss, I can't do work for the next 3 months unless I get a pay raise. How well do you think that conversation is going to go over? Healthcare policy extenders and reforms. Policy extenders and reforms. Within the legislation is a healthcare package that spans hundreds of pages. It takes on a number of priorities for lawmakers, from extending telehealth flexibility under Medicare to a 5-year reauthorization of legislation aimed at combating the opioid crisis and a measure to preventing pandemics. Okay, first off, when we had the pandemic, I just want to point out that everybody was like, this is a once in a lifetime event. But suddenly it is so important that they got to include it in a spending bill, or I'm sorry, in a bill to keep government running. So government might shut down so that we can have a measure that will prevent, and we're not even going to get into whether it actually would prevent pandemics, but the answer to that is no, it wouldn't. But they want to include some measure that will supposedly prevent pandemics, little tongue twister there. And that's, but it was a lifetime event. Well, when are we expecting to have another one? Shouldn't it be another lifetime, like another 100 years from now? You have time to deal with that later. If you think that is necessary, you have time to deal with it later. The opioid crisis, that's been going on for like what, over a decade? Okay, again, government's been running, yet the opioid crisis has not really been combated that much. Like there's been some things along that front. But again, it's been happening simultaneously. So again, these are like, I'm just pointing out that none of these really need, and here's why they don't need, because they've been an issue, they've been happening, and government's been running. So there's no reason to include these in a bill so that people could object to it later and then get mad and stomp your feet and say, well, you just don't want the government to run. I mean, I don't. I'm a little different. I'm a libertarian. So the idea of the government shutting down, that is a Christmas present to me. But if you're talking about the regular Americans, regular everyday average Americans, they should be looking at this and going, questioning it and saying, wait a minute, why? Why is it that all of a sudden this has to be in the bill or else a shutdown? Transparency in ticket and hotel prices. The funding measure also included provisions aimed at making hotel and live event ticket prices more transparent by prohibiting deceptive advertising. Really? That bread and circuses ring a bell? That sounds pretty like you can't get any more bread and circuses, I think, than this. We will shut the government down if we can't make, laws to aimed at, improving the hotel and live event ticket prices. And I don't know. I'm not even sure what this means, but to be more transparent by prohibiting deceptive. I mean, I know what those words mean, but has anybody been like went to get a hotel, and I go on Google all the time or Priceline or any number of websites, and it'll show me a map and it'll be like, here are the prices for all of these hotels, and I can choose. I mean, does transparent just mean like if it says $350 a night that I have to get the breakdown of what that $350 is? I don't think most people want that. I don't think people care about that. So I mean, I'd have to dig in and know, but again, we're talking about a 1,500-page bill. And so out of a 1,500-page bill that was dropped on Tuesday, and then you want me as the American people to support this bill and to say, oh yeah, maybe, and just assume for a moment, maybe I would say, yeah, we should include the transparency in ticket and hotel prices. But before I can agree to that, I would have to have time to read it and understand what is happening. But just based on this, I'm going to tell you it doesn't belong in the bill because we're talking about keeping the government running, which, as Vivek cleanly showed, you can do in a simple sentence. Addressing drone threats. Well, that's convenient. That's wild. Drone threats. What threat is there? I mean, we were just talking on, we've been talking, the media has been like, what are these things flying around? Looks like there's drones in New Jersey. And the government's like, we don't know. And then some people are like, it's the Iranians. And then other people are like, it's not the Iranians. So like we don't even have a definitive answer of what the drones are doing, what they are, who owns them. We have none of this information yet. We are going to have a provision in a bill, hold up government running to deal with this. To deal with what? What are we dealing with? So one of two things has happened here with just this drone thing. One of two things has happened. Either Congress members know what these drones are and they're not telling us, possible, or They are like, hey, here's an opportunity to regulate the American people even more. And we'll just, the Homeland Security Act, we'll just put it under a threat to national security. This is a threat to, right? We'll just assume everything is a threat to the American people, and we'll just give ourselves more power. No, 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 and no some more. All right, let's take a look at Grok. Let's go back to Grok, and we're gonna type some cool things in because I think that's give me a second here. Let me adjust my screens a little bit here. So I think we can learn a whole lot here from just diving in. So let me show you. Somebody online showed a few examples of how to ask Grok these questions. So we're going to pull this up really quickly. We're going to walk through it, and then we're going to call this a day. All right, where are we here? Boom. That's not what I want. Give me a sec. Give me a second. I apologize. What I wanted. Is it this? This. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. All right. Boom. There it is. All right, so here's Grok. And let me zoom in so you can read it a little bit. There we go. So here's what you do. So we have this link to the continuing resolution bill. And then what this person did was they said, find any programs related to healthcare in the continuing resolution bill located at the URL below and summarize them in a table, including the program name, short description, and page numbers they are located on. Like, that's pretty neat that you can just be like, yo, give me a table. Give me some information about healthcare related programs in a tabled format. So here's what it returned. I might zoom out just a wee bit there. All right. Title up here. Program name, short description, page number. Community health centers. Extends funding and authorization for community health centers, which provide primary care to underserved populations through March 28, 2025. Page number 25. National Health Service Corps extends a program, incentivizes healthcare professionals to work in areas with shortages through March 28, 2025 by providing scholarships and loan repayment. 26. Teaching healthcare health center GME, graduate medical education through March 28. They're all March 20. I think all of them are March 28, 2025. Special diabetes program. I'm just going to read the titles. Health professions programs, public health workforce, family planning program. You know, I try to keep this family friendly, but I'm just going to say it. People love sex. They don't really need a whole lot of help with family planning. And for those that might want some assistance, you know, like, hey, what's it like having a child? What do I need to know? There are plenty of resources out there. There are books that you can read. There are websites devoted to here's what's going on. Here are some things that you need to know if you're starting a family. Those things already exist. The government has absolutely no business, especially the federal government, zero business involving itself in family planning because it's already out there. Go to Google and type in family planning, what I need to know. I haven't done this, but I'm just making a guess that if you go do that, you will find plenty of information, more than you need. Government doesn't need to do any of this. Substance abuse and mental health. Again, we have entities out there that will deal with this. Ryan White HIV/AIDS program, 340B drug pricing program, right? So it lists out all these things, and I can go to those pages now and I can read them if I want. Now, I did some typing of some things in as well. So let's see. Now, what I found was that and other users found it as well, that maybe this has to be trained per user. I'm not really sure, but other users were having some problems. I didn't quite get, when I was asking for table format, I didn't quite get page numbers. It would say like, you know, it would give me some reason why it couldn't give me the page number. And there's a number of reasons for that, but it's still pretty good. So let's ask about this. So here's one. So we're gonna copy this and paste it right on in there. So what I'm typing in, let's see here. Give me a second. Let me the way that there. All right. So I typed in sum the total expenditures in the continuing resolution bill located at the URL below and summarize them in a table, including the program name, short description, and page numbers they are located on. So I basically just took what this other person did and modified it a little bit. So I type it in, I run it, and then it takes a few seconds, and here we go. So, program name Department of Defense funds military personnel operations, maintenance, and procurement through March 28, 2025, $243 billion. Pages 4 to 5. Department of Veterans Affairs, $109 billion. Department of Health and Human Services, $125 billion. Department of Education, which should be getting shut down, $73 billion. Department of Homeland Security, $54 billion. Department of Housing and Urban Development, $32.8 billion. Agriculture, $24 billion. Department of Congress, $11 billion. And it's got the page numbers. So you can go and look and you can say, if you're curious about the Department of Agriculture, like it says, covers various programs, including SNAP and rural development through March 2025. And you can say, well, let me go get some details about this. So you can go to page 39 and 41 and you can read a little bit about it. Now, it'll probably reference something else and you would have to do a little more digging, but this is a nice little start. Department of Justice, Department of Labor, Department of State and Internal Assistance, Department of the Interior, Department of Energy, Transportation, EPA, other federal programs, right? So total expenditure sum, approximately $848.8 billion. So you have almost $850 billion that's summarized here. So I'm not reliant on the media anymore. I can go and it's giving me page numbers, so I can go and verify and say, did the AI get this correct? And maybe other federal programs, if I were to go look on pages 53 to 60, it's going to have, I'm going to total it to some other number. It's possible, but it gives me an opportunity to dig into this bill without necessarily having to read it in its entirety. And so now, ideally, reading it in its entirety is best. All right, so this is a cool one. I like this. So let's put this in there, and so we'll do this. Does this bill include any pay raises for Congress? And yes, the continuing resolution bill includes provisions for pay raises for members of Congress. Specifically, it does not include language that would block the automatic cost of living adjustment for members of Congress. That this means that Congress could receive a pay raise with the maximum potential January 2025 adjustment being 3.8%, which would increase their salary from $174,000 to $180,600, an increase of $6,600. So now without even reading the bill, when somebody says, "Hey, this is going to give Congress a pay raise," now I know. Let me see. Let's try one more thing. And this is just off the cuff. What page is that on? Let's just see. Let's see what it gives me. All right, page 15. The provision related to the pay raise for members of Congress is mentioned on page 15 of the continuing resolution bill. How cool is that? Like, this is really, really awesome. I actually like this. I don't like the bill because it's trash, but I haven't read the bill. But I know a whole lot about the bill already. And I can verify, I can fact check the media and say, did they get it right? And I can dig in and inquire more. And then and it gives me the page numbers. So now I'm able to go and say, okay, did AI get it right? Do I reach the same conclusion? Because AI is still a work in progress. But I think Elon Musk tweeted out, this was the last year that Congress will be able to present an omnibus bill that AI cannot just parse through and help the American people understand what's in it. So gone are the days of, we got to pass the bill so that we know what's in it. And hopefully, if the American people are wise, gone are the days, or gone will be the days when Congress gets all bipartisan-y, and then they say, hey, American people, here's this 1,500-page bill that we are presenting to keep the government running, even though the majority of it is really just a bunch of additional spending, right? And neither side now, hopefully, will be able to bamboozle the American people by pointing the finger and saying, hey, we signed on to it. What's your problem? No more. So hopefully the Democrats, in that clip that I played with Hakeem Jeffries, and he's like, you own this, blah, blah, blah. We had a bipartisan agreement. You promised, right? Hopefully Hopefully, they will pay for that. I hope they pay for that comment, because that tells me they don't give a damn about the American people. They care more about their swamp and their agreements than they care about what the American people want. Because again, they put out a bill, 1,500 pages on a Tuesday, expecting to pass it by a Friday. And now they're scrambling to figure out what to do now that it's been rejected. Well, you should have passed it out sooner and it should have been shorter. That's what you should have done. All right, let's get into some comments here. Keith Garrett says Fed Christmas holiday paid, basically. Let's see what else we got in here. Joe Hanush says, no, I don't want to continue the spending, Mr. Doge. I agree. I don't want to continue the spending. And I would argue and say that a bill, a proper bill, should actually show us how much they're going to cut. Like, hey, last year it was 850 billion. Guess what? This year we've got it down to 700 billion. And why do I say that? Like, is 700 billion okay? No, it's not okay. It is better than 850 billion. And I'm just making up a number. But that would show me that Congress has spent the time to say, you know what? We should cut some stuff. Maybe some stuff is no longer relevant. And I'm speaking out of the aside from the libertarian box here. From the libertarian perspective, none of that spending was acceptable. But let's step away from that for a moment and let's have a conversation as if I was a regular everyday American person, where people are reliant on some of these programs. And if you just pull the rug out, then we're going to create a catastrophe that I'm not sure the American people are prepared to handle. Okay. So we do have to dial it back. And so what we should want to see is Congress, their bipartisanship should be on, hey, we agreed to this and we managed to lower the spending from last year. That's what the American people should be hearing. And now that we have these cool tools, the American people can go and double check. And we can say, hey, look, why are you adding more spending? You should be reducing spending. What is it about a government that can only seem to increase its spending? Why is it that you can't, like, companies all over the country figure out how to cut cost, but the government can only figure out how to add cost? Not acceptable. And we'll start, and the American people should get tough. Like Trump and JD Vance were like, Republicans should be tough. No, the American people should be tougher. We should be like, oh, you couldn't find anything to cut? Guess we'll have to replace you with somebody who can, because that's what we want. We're at a point now. We've been at a point for longer than since I've been alive. We've been at a point where we should start seeing cuts, real cuts, clear, unmistakable, unambiguous cuts. Not this, okay, we got to keep the government running and do all these other things. That's not a cut. That isn't cutting spending. And it needs to be so clear that everybody from Fox News to MSNBC are saying, wow, we didn't think it could be done, but they did. Like, there should be virtually nobody that says, no, they're not cutting. Everybody should be in agreement and say, yeah, they cut. Democrats, Republicans, socialists, communists, libertarians, Republicans, Democrats, whatever. Everybody should be like, damn, they really did cut. That's how clear it should be. And if it's not that clear, fire them. Get rid of them. Toss them out. If you can get rid of them early, do it. Demand they resign. Like, oh, you couldn't come up with this cut in spending? Resign. We can find somebody. There's plenty of people that want to go jump into Congress, and there's plenty of people that will say, hey, you can cut here. So if you can't even find something and champion it, think about this. Think of it this way. In the House, there's 435 members. Okay? In the House. Imagine if 435 people all found something that they could champion and say, we want to cut this. Now, would we get all that? No, we're not. But I'm just imagining what could happen. Okay. And then let's further imagine that they can't quite all agree on everything, because one person over here will want to cut something and this other person will say, no, I think we should cut this. So then imagine that they argue amongst themselves and then they determine, hey, you know what? Here's this bipartisanship agreement. Instead of cutting, the whole 50 million from this thing that I want. How about we cut 10 million? You cut 10 million from yours. You wanted 80 million, but we're only going and that'll be our bipartisan agreement. We won't cut as much as we wanted, but we'll make an agreement to cut a little bit less than we were looking for. And that'll be our agreement. That would work for me. I would do that. And if you had 435 members all doing that, then in theory, you could have 435 areas where you cut spending. But if you want to assume a little more practicality, then the reality would be they're not all going to agree. And so some of that stuff would just get kind of discarded. So even if a half, right, even if half of that, over 215 items were found to be cut, then that would be better than what we have now. But if we're being a little bit more practical, probably not going to get even over 215. So let's cut that again in half. Now we're looking at about a quarter. So now you have, let's say 100 items that Congress could agree on, that the House of Representatives could agree on to cut spending on. I think that's well within practical. No reason why we shouldn't see that. And honestly, if you came out with a bill that was 1,500 pages and you said, all right, American people, we're throwing a curveball at you. This is a 1,500 page bill, which we know you hate, and you're going to want to fire us just on the sheer fact that it's 1,500 pages. But we're delivering it early. We're delivering it 2 or 3 weeks early so that you have time to go look, because here's a real Christmas present. This bill is full of cuts. Surprise. Something different. It's full of cuts. It's not full of expenditures, new ones, or other garbage, expanding power or whatever. It's full of cuts. And we're proud this time to send you a 1,500 page bill that you're going to read, and all you're going to be doing is calculating more and more cuts. So by the time you get to the end of it, you have found cut after cut after cut. In fact, American people, we're going to tell you, we couldn't all agree, all 435 of us, we couldn't agree. So what we ended up doing was we ended up getting to an agreement on 100 items. So we found 100 items that we could cut. We're good. Here you go, American people. You know what? That would be the first bill, and probably the only bill, that I would ever say for 1,500 pages, that's a good bill. Now, if you think, well, DL, how do you there? I'm trying to think of what bill it was. I just read a bill. Was it? Oh, yes, it was the bill by what's his name? It was a Congress member who put out a bill to end the Department of Education, and it was like 5 or 7 pages long. And so what he did was he said he took a practical look at it, and he said, all right, some of these things like special needs, he goes, these are things that people see are really important. So we're going to shift them elsewhere. We're going to move some of the responsibilities from the Department of Education, things that we think are absolutely necessary, but then we're going to get rid of the rest. And so the bulk of the bill was about, where is this specific item going to move to? And then at the end, it was like, look, anything not listed in this bill, we're getting rid of, right? So yeah, sometimes a bill does need to be lengthy so that you can properly address, hey, we're moving this, we're specifically getting rid of this. Here's how we're addressing this thing that's currently in existence that we're going to get rid of, so that we don't create a catastrophe for the American people. Because if you just had a bill that said no spending, all of a sudden, like all these programs, well, you have people dependent on those programs. So what's going to happen with those people? Well, chances are they're going to deal with some hardships, and they're going to be very angry, and we're going to be right back where we started. So you really do need to take an incremental approach. I hate it, but it's the reality. And so if Congress had a bipartisan bill, those 1,500 pages, and was just full of cuts, no added expenditures, not a single one, only cuts, I would be like, that's a good bill. May not go far enough, but it's a good bill. Let's see what else we got. Keith Garrett says, essentially said government shutdown, fire them all, government startup, and hire all new people from scratch. I could go with that, although I'm not sure the American people would be willing to stomach it because it would be tough, right? Like if we're speaking honestly, it would be tough, and that is certainly the reality. All right, let's see what we got here. I think that's it for the comments. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this episode informative and inspiring. Be sure to catch me Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. for an informed discussion on politics and culture. By the way, I'm always looking for dads to join me for Dad Talk, which, by the way, is tomorrow. Dad Talk is my series where I invite everyday dads on to talk about what's important to them in the context of being a dad. No argument, no debate, and dads choose the topic. It's my way of raising dad voices. So tomorrow, I'm going to tell you now, tomorrow I've got a dad coming on. He's a local dad. It's my son's jujitsu instructor. So we're going to have a great conversation. Make sure you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, or if you prefer my Rumble channel, you can go to youtube.libertydad.com, or you can go to rumble.libertydad.com. While you are there, let me know how I'm doing by leaving me a comment. Last but not least, I want you to remember, if you're a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. I want you to have a great week. Catch you next time. But for now, I'm out.